Welcome on into the show, everybody. It is episode 8, season 8 here on the Hoopers Log, 3 weeks into the NBA regular season, and we are here to break it down for you and talk about a couple of things here that have gone on over the first 3 weeks. Yeah, it's November 9th, here Tuesday, November 9th. And again, we've got our Motorcade podcast coming up here soon for the Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham's back in the building. So again, listen to them here coming up here in the next couple of days. Coming up here probably tomorrow, etc. when they're coming on. And then on top of that, the W as well as they break down everything going on in the off season for the WNBA as they get their stuff going on as well. But we're here for the Hoopers Log on episode 8, season 8 for the 2021-2022 season. And a couple of things I wanted to get to today because I feel like it's very necessary to bring up with where we are. I mean, last week I talked about the Bulls. I feel like this upcoming weekend will determine the narrative of what they are moving forward on this very, very early season. They haven't done so great since the last podcast. They're 6-3 now as of the recording of this podcast. And they're doing okay. I mean, they're hanging in there. They're floating around, but they weren't as hot as they were when we last talked. And they're a team where, like I said, I think the conversation needs to be, what after they do this upcoming weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, when they go on the West Coast, that will be a determining factor of what to take from where they're going as this early season progresses. That's my big thing for you to watch this weekend. And also, when you look at, we talked about John Morant last week, and the other side of the coin is a guy who, as we all know, just got put into the top 75, Damian Lillard. I wanted to talk about him as well, and also Golden State. And let's start off with Damian Lillard. I find it fascinating that Damian Lillard, a guy who, when we look at him, and we look at his season thus far, after being named into the NBA top 75 ever, all time. We're talking about the greatest players to ever play this game. And to begin this season, how this guy has started off so incredibly cold to the point where we watch him and we're like, who? What's he doing? Why is he considered a top 75 player? It's kind of like watching Space Jam, right? You watch Space Jam, if you've ever seen the original, not number 2 that came out this past summer. We're talking about the OG Space Jam, right? We're talking about everything that has to do with the guys from that show. Charles Barkley, Patrick Ewing. Those guys, when they lost their powers, they looked like complete scrubs, and they had to go everywhere they could to try and find a way to see if they could get their game back, right? I feel like when you're watching this year's Damian Lillard, you're seeing a guy who lost his powers. Look at how he started this year. 18 and a half points per game. Opening night, October 20th, if I'm not mistaken, that was opening night for them. 20 points against Phoenix, 19. Clippers, 12. Memphis, 20. Clippers, he had 25, 9-17 from the floor, not too bad. Charlotte, 14 points. Philly, 20 points, 7-20 from the floor. Cleveland, he had 26, 10-27. That is not a good shooting percentage. Indiana, 4 points in 38 minutes, 2 of 13 from the floor. And then against the Lakers the other night, 25 points. That's not a bad game. 9-19 from the floor. That's not awful. That's not terrible. But what I wanted to talk about and get to about Damian Lillard is this expectation of him and the Portland Trailblazers of where they're expected to be this year as a team. They got a new coach. Obviously, they're in a new situation, a new scenario out there in the Western Conference. The expectations have never been high for them. They've always been kind of, they're the Portland Trailblazers. They live up in Alaska. Who really cares about them? But in all reality, with Damian Lillard being at the stature that he now is, you would think, okay, this is one of the best players in all of basketball. And he should be. He's been that kind of guy for God knows however long. Starting off 5-5, I mean, who's the judge, right? The Lakers have started off 5-5. There's a couple of other players, too, when you look at them and you look at how they're overall playing out. I mean, it's playing out very oddly in the entire NBA early on. I mean, Toronto's 6-5, Charlotte's 5-6, Milwaukee's 4-6, Boston's 4-6. You've got a lot of oddities going on. Atlanta's 4-6. It's just the signs that it's still early. But Damian Lillard's cold start, it just reminded me of Space Jam regarding guys and their abilities and, their opportunities to show up and do what they need to do. And I found it very, very fascinating and interesting to see his stat lines early on in the year and to say, what is this guy going through? Where is he at? What's in his mind? What is the struggling nature of his diaphragm right now for what he is producing? And I think what we have to attribute it to is now probably the new head coach, the new schemes, the new aura of the team. This is the first 3 weeks he's had a brand new coach on his side. And seeing what Damian Lillard is and what he's been his entire career, maybe he feels like he's a little bit restricted in some regard. Maybe he feels like he can't do all the things he did before, or he's in the same, wavelength as the head coach as he's had for the past, basically his whole career. I mean, he's had Terry Stotts as pretty much his whole career. And, when you have that freedom and that flow and that leadership opportunity and availability, you kind of feel like you can do whatever you want and your confidence is sky high. I feel like with a new coach, that goes away. I don't think he really cares about what he is on the all-time 75. But let's be honest. I think early on in the season, maybe he heard that and he was like, uh-oh, here comes the criticism. And now the criticism's only looming larger because it's like, dude, you're one of the all-time greats. And they're saying, you've only scored 4 points here, 17 points here, 18 points here. Like, you ain't an all-time great. You ain't playing like an all-time great. So finding him and looking at him is fascinating. Like we look at Ja Morant and we look at their start in Memphis. Memphis is starting all right. I mean, they're 5-4. They're doing something okay. I mean, they're Ja Morant's looking like a potential MVP, whereas Damian Lillard, he doesn't even look like he deserves to be in a top 1,000 in regards to NBA players the way he's been playing. He's been playing like trash. Frankly, he's been playing like garbage. And I think, kind of like looking at Ja Morant and seeing how he's going to play out here over the next month, the next 3 weeks now, I'd say start paying attention to Damian Lillard and start paying attention to the Portland Trail Blazers and what they are. Because if Damian Lillard keeps playing cold like this, you got to start wondering what's going on with this guy. I mean, you really do. I mean, we're all doing it right now with James Harden. James Harden is not playing to the degree of James Harden that we all knew. And obviously, there's a lot of reasons for that. James Harden is a guy where when you look at him and you look at how he plays, he's a guy where he has to take every single angle just to adapt and do what he can do, right? And there is nothing wrong with that. That's a majority of guys in the league. But James Harden had perfected that opportunity and those angles over time. Now, with his injuries, with where he's at in his career, and not just that, also in regards to the team he's on, the type of team he plays for, all these things, they're all adding up just a little bit. He's a bigger guy now. You've got all these things kind of going against James Harden, and you see how he's playing. It's not that Damian Lillard is in that sector as well. Damian Lillard's in the prime of his career, and he's playing like straight garbage. I mean, considering what his ranking is all time and where he should be in the pantheon of the legendary factor of basketball, he's playing like straight trash. I mean, if he was, if he hadn't made the top 75 and if people hadn't seen him and how he'd played the last 5-10 years, people would be like, this is Damian Lillard, he's just off to a cold start. No, you got higher expectations now, bro. You're one of the all-time greats. You got to see it like that. You got to play it like that. And he's playing like straight garbage. So I'm just saying, keep an eye out for Damian Lillard over the holiday season and see what is actually going on with this guy. Because let me tell you, if he ain't playing up to snuff here over the next month or so, with the new coach and the new system and the new everything, I'm not trying to sit here and say Damian Lillard should be traded as of right now. But you give it another month, maybe 2 months, going into January, and if he's still playing to this degree where, he's only getting, he's shooting under 50, under 40% from the floor. He's not playing up to his degree to help his team win. He's not the reason why they're winning. He's not the reason why they're important. You start to say, well, okay, trading Damian Lillard is not a bad idea. And that's when you start to get down the rabbit hole of, okay, this is a guy where his career may be on the tailspin, and who knows, maybe he's not the guy we saw for the last 5, 6, 7 years in Portland. Which would be really, really devastating and sad because he's one of my all-time favorite players in the league. He's just hard not to root for. He's got a great mentality, a great motor. He always tries to improve. He's a great player, obviously. But you got to start wondering what's going on between the ears with him. And that's an interesting thing to look out for as we move throughout the season. Again, 3 weeks in, he's not looking great at all. He looks like a complete shell, washed up version of himself. And if he wants to go down this rabbit hole of being a great player without an NBA championship, that's what he's turning into very quickly. He doesn't have that championship mentality that I don't think a lot of guys, that we've seen who are in this all-time great pantheon of guys. He seems to shell up and clam up, and that's the problem. Is that I think a lot of people thought, okay, let's see what the real Damian Lillard can do now with the new head coach and new this and everything, and he's just inconsistent. And that is not the mark of a champion and a guy who can lead his team. And if he keeps playing this way and keeps playing to this degree, it's all just going to kind of fall downhill and probably tailspin. And I don't want to see a guy like Damian Lillard tailspin. I want to see him succeed and play great. But you just got to kind of look at the way things are. He's just not doing great. I mean, even that Laker game where he scored 25 points here a couple of days ago, he looked great early on, and then he just kind of didn't get involved. And that's, again, that's interesting because he's a cold-blooded killer. The way he plays is a cold-blooded killer mentality. And he has not been any of those here in this first 3 weeks of the season. So keep an eye out for Damian Lillard as you're moving forward, and keep an eye out for what his mentality is and what he is moving forward as the season progresses, especially here in the holiday season. Okay, I wanted to talk about this team because this was my main topic today that I wanted to get to. The Golden State Warriors. Okay, I mentioned this last week about how they got off to a hot start and how they're looking good, etc. And I know a week doesn't really change much in the NBA regular season. A week is what? How long is the NBA season? It's about 6 months long. You start multiplying that up, 24, 25 weeks over an NBA regular season. That's usually about how long it is, 26 weeks, etc. And 3 weeks in does not dictate or indicate anything regarding what you're going to do all year. But when you start off the season, like I mentioned last week, when you start off the season this way, we're about a tenth of the way through the season, an eighth of the way through the season, a tenth, a ninth, an eighth, you name it, right? Once you play 8 games, you're a tenth. Once you play 9, you're roughly about a ninth. Once you play 10, you're an eighth. So we're in that section of the season, right? First 3 weeks. And Golden State has played their first 9 games that, before the recording of this game, obviously they play tonight. It will be a complete eighth of the way through the season when this recording pops. They have 8 wins at a minimum, potentially 9. And I'm looking at the stat lines, just like I look at the stat lines of Damian Lillard. I look at the stat line of Steph Curry. Outside of the first week of the season, Steph Curry has not needed to go absolutely ham in every single game. And let me just put y'all on notice for a minute. The title of this pod is Still Golden for reasons. For reasons. You watch this Golden State Warriors team. You watch how they are developing their young players, how they are developing their roster overall. Draymond Green is taking on more and more responsibility, as he should, as a great player that he is. And you're seeing other guys start to slowly chip into the offense, be the leaders, the runners of the offense on that portion of the floor where it comes to passing, starting the sets, the formations. And you're seeing a team that's developing the right way in regards to how you utilize everybody else to make the team a complete set. And what's really terrifying about that is that they don't have Klay Thompson yet. As we all know, this is common sense. They don't have Klay Thompson yet, and he's not coming back till December, January. And the scary part about that is if they just keep implementing and setting their system and they win while they're doing it, because I don't think anybody expected them to win at this clip this early with the team that they have laid out right now. If they can keep developing and keep setting up and keep regenerating and keep regurgitating this learning platform that they're setting up right now early on in the year, that's how everybody should attack this year, early on. Every single year, early on, November, December, before Christmas, is a learning platform to figure it out. Hopefully you win and you start off the season hot and you play great. But if you don't win and you don't play phenomenally, that's why I don't really rip the teams who are 500 right now. It doesn't matter. Being 500 right now doesn't matter. If you're just a shade under 500, it doesn't matter. As long as you're not a team where you look at the overall scheme and the landscape of things and you're in the complete bottom pit of the league, like a 1-9 or a 1-8 team, as long as you're not in that category, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. This isn't March. This isn't February. Your season's not over yet. You're fine. But in regards to you want to get off to some kind of a decent lead. If the Golden State Warriors were 5-5 right now, I'd probably be saying the same thing, but it's way more relevant now because they're learning and they're trying to figure it out and go along about it the right way with their youth and their team and their setup and their structure and everything. And they're 8-1 as of the recording of this show. And the most terrifying part is that teams, when they have the success that the Golden State Warriors had for 5 years, where they went to the NBA Finals from 15 to 19, and they went every single year, and they were easily the class of the Western Conference for half a decade. And you look at how they played and their structure and their core group and everything that was put together. People forget the core of that 14-15 team had completely changed from the time they were that to the time they got to 2019. Excuse me, the 18-19 season. From that 14-15 to that 18-19 season, the core of that team completely revamped and changed. It went to a top-heavy, superstar-laden, non-balanced team that was all really just, hey, starting rotation, throw in some guys to kind of make it work for a little bit, and then call it a day. They've gone back to that 14-15 mentality, that pre-14-15 mentality, and said, hey, we can't win with just our stars. We don't have that type of team anymore because, first of all, Clay's about to, if not is getting paid. Steph is getting paid. Draymond's about to get paid or should be paid. And we're going to be a top-heavy team contractually, and we have to figure it out with our youth and develop them properly, which I think they already knew that. I mean, they're not dumb. They're intelligent as hell. There's a reason why they went to 5 straight Western Conference championships and went to the NBA Finals 5 straight years. There's a reason. But they're developing in a nature and in a way that, again, kind of like putting Damian Lillard on blast, putting Ja Morant on notice, and other guys, the Bulls, you got to watch them this weekend coming up. The Golden State Warriors, you got to watch them in regards to their ability and their mindset and their processing capabilities to see how they're going to grow their organization as they keep trickling down the pike. If this team gets to Thanksgiving, Christmas, and they've got 5, 6, 7 losses again, and they're looking like a team that's humming, they're playing great basketball, and they're looking like a team that, is still figuring it out, you got to watch out. And here's the reason why. Oh, Chris, Klay Thompson's not back yet. That's part of it. The other part of it is there's this growing seed of confidence that your team can build early on in the year that carries on throughout. That's what I said about Chicago last week. And that's why I said this weekend coming up for Chicago is gigantic. If Chicago can leave their home, go to the West Coast, complete different time change, all these things going on for Chicago, and they can win most of, if not all of their games on the West Coast and come out of that being a 10-5, 10-4 team, 11-5, 11-4 team, and they can come out of that, that's a huge boost in confidence moving forward for the rest of the year. This Golden State team was not expected to be where they are. I don't even think they expected to be where they are. And especially with the way Steph's been playing. Steph has been playing normal basketball for his standards. Normal basketball. He has not had to go off being a la Kobe Bryant outside of the first week, 2 weeks of the season. Over the last week, week and a half, he has not had to go off. The team has been trying to really help the youth and the structure of this team to develop the right way so that come later on in the year when they're going to need them and come potentially playoff time, everybody's confident and everybody can play their role to a T. Very, very, very San Antonio Spurs-like. Very, very San Antonio Spurs-like. Respectful to me. It's just absolute respect. Being a diehard Spurs fan is very, 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 very reminiscent. But this time they're winning. And when Klay comes back, if they're still doing this and they've gotten to this point where they're winning and things are working out and they're looking great, do you know what Klay Thompson has to do? This is what Klay Thompson has to do, and this is the mentality he'll need to have when he enters back onto the court. He's watching it. He knows what's going on day to day. He sees it. Klay ain't dumb. All he's got to do is jump on the court, play a little bit of defense, maybe not guard the best man on the floor, but, warm him back up, play someone basic, no one crazy. Doesn't have to play incredible defense. And on top of that, all he's got to do is be a catch-and-shoot guy. Do you know what Klay did his first 2, 3, 4, 5 years in the league? He was just a catch-and-shoot guy. He wasn't great. Clay has always been a legendary three-point shooter. The difference was before they started winning championships, Klay Thompson could not hit a non-open jumper. I don't care who you are. Prior to the 2014-2015 season, Klay Thompson, if he had a guy in his face, could not make shots. Now that he's older, now that he's got that championship swagger, now that he's got that confidence, now that he's just a complete veteran in the league, possibly an all-time legend in regards to shooting guards, maybe potentially in the conversation for top 10 all-time. Now he's got that swag behind him, that ability. This dude can make any shot he wants when he catches and shoot. He's probably, when healthy, the best catch and shoot player in the league. Now, no rip on Steph. Steph's clearly the best shooter in the league. But in regards to just strictly catch and shoot, if that's all Klay has to do for the first month and a half he comes back, look out. Because now they've just added another weapon. Let him warm up defensively and get back to used to what he used to do on the perimeter. And the next thing you know, you've got a Klay Thompson that doesn't really have to do a whole lot, but is still absolutely lethal from the outside and his ability to lead the floor and do what he needs to do. This Golden State Warrior team, y'all, you have to be on notice. And I know you're looking at the standings and, oh, Chris, it's still early. And I get that. I totally get that. They could totally fall off a cliff and lose 6 in a row, and before you know it, they're 8-7, and boom, shakalaka, it doesn't matter, right? But I don't think anybody saw this. Like I said, if they were 5-5 and stuck in that mix with the Lakers, etc., and I'll tell you what, the Lakers keep playing the way they're playing, I'm going to have a podcast on them because I'm going to go in. They're not playing particularly great. Russell Westbrook's playing like absolute trash. There's a lot of things going on with the Lakers. I might talk about them next week. But I wanted to talk about the positive and let you know, early on in the year, the Golden State Warriors, we're seeing them play to a level and to a degree. They won by 46 the other night. Did you see that? They absolutely mollywopped whoever they faced to win by 46 points. Who are these Golden State Warriors? They beat the New Orleans Pelicans 126-85, and Steph Curry didn't even need to do that whole much. You want to see what Steph Curry's stat line was on that game? Steph Curry, 19 points, 6 assists, 3 rebounds, just under 30 minutes played, 5 of 15 from the floor, 5 of 13 from 3. Basically, all he did was shoot threes and made a couple free throws, and he called it a day. Jordan Poole is looking fantastic. Wiggins is playing great in his role. You have a team right now in Golden State that is operating on full cylinders and doesn't necessarily have to play extremely hard to do so. They just have to figure it out, get their feet wet, and learn this new process of the players that they have in their system. And before you know it, come Christmas, come Martin Luther King Day, come All-Star break, they could be a team with 25, 30, 40 wins. They could be firing on all cylinders with Klay Thompson. And come playoff time, they could be a top 4 seed. And before you know it, they're back to the Golden State Warriors we knew 2-3 years ago. And if they become that team again, and they get back to that narrative, and a guy like Steph Curry doesn't necessarily have to go all nuclear on everybody and score 40, 45 points a night. And then there's those nights when Steph just decides to kind of make everything that he throws up. Good night. This is an NBA champion again. And nobody's going to debate that. Nobody's going to sit here and be like, oh, Golden State. No, you can't say that anymore about them. They got that pedigree. They got them guys. They got them dudes. They cannot be overlooked if they're that kind of team come the next couple months. They cannot be overlooked. 2 months from now, if they're still in the same top 4 category of the Western Conference, they are not at all, period, to be taken lightly. Steph Curry, you could make the case right now, moving forward, if they keep doing what they're doing, could be looked at as the best player in basketball. As someone who is as staunch as a Steph Curry opposer and hater as myself over the years, who has reverted and changed over time, watching him play, evolve, get better, change into a player that's more of a inside-out type presence and what he's become. I never thought I'd ever say that. But he is molding into a guy where we're looking at an all-time legend play Among Us because he is adapting and getting better all the time. And that is all we ask of our legends, right? Is to adapt and evolve and mold and change and improve. And that's all this man does. And the Golden State Warriors as a unit, as a team, as a system, as a franchise, as everything moving forward has turned into complete legendary status. Because all they do is develop. All they do is figure out how to get it done. Honestly, if it wasn't for COVID, we might be sitting here and saying, well, damn, they've been on this run for God knows how long. And if it wasn't for injuries, COVID, all that stuff, I'm not sitting here saying the Golden State Warriors were a great team 2 years ago with COVID. They were not. They were in the dumps. Everybody was hurt. There were problems, contracts, young guys, issues. I think it worked out to their advantage because they got to figure themselves out a little bit more. You look at last year and how they got they barely missed the playoffs. And you look at them and you look at how they got there. Again, they're a team where you look at them and you say, yeah, if they just pick it up and figure it out and develop internally, then yeah, they'll be there. We're so stuck in this era of you got to sign guys, you got to figure out guys, you got to get stars, you got to have stars. There's no talk about development and doing it the right way. The Golden State Warriors are doing that. That's why Milwaukee won a championship last year. They had been doing it the right way for years. All they had to do was pick up a couple pieces. We're so locked into this. Pick up free agents, pick up players, do this. We need a star. Don't get me wrong. You need stars to win championships. Nobody's stupid. Everybody knows that. But in regards to the inner workings of the game and the systems and the sets and the defense and the everything and the chemistry, you have to do it the right way. And Golden State is getting right back into that sweet, sweet tread spot of doing it the right way. They're right there. Again. And we look at a team like the Lakers early on in the year. That's not to say the Lakers won't figure it out, because I think the Lakers will figure it out. But you look at a team like the Lakers, and you sit back and you say, they've got all these stars, they've got all these guys, they've got all these players, and they're just looking absolutely mediocre. They are not looking like a complete, dynamic, championship-laden, driven team. They just look mediocre. Whereas a team like the Golden State Warriors, no pressure, happy-go-lucky, playing good. Young guys figuring it out, getting our feet wet, getting our chemistry figured out. We're just trying to figure things out, and we're 8-1. Oh, no big deal. We're 8-1. That's a problem. That's what you need to look at if you're talking about the league, if you're talking about Twitter, if you're talking about all these other things going on in regards to the world of basketball. Wherever you're talking about it, you got to talk about how it's being done the right way. That's how you win in this league. Again, early, 3 weeks into the season, big whoop. But in the overall landscape of things, what the Golden State Warriors are doing is terrifying. We had Halloween damn near 10 days ago. The Golden State Warriors, they're the scariest team right now. They're the absolutely scariest team in the league right now. And I can't think of a better team to represent the Western Conference if they keep this up. Because dang, I tell you what, come December, if they're still leading the West like this, good night. Good night. We're back to it. We're back to what we had to go through for 5 years from 14 to 19. It's going to be the same exact thing. Well, deuces, y'all. Salute, deuces. See ya, Golden State Warriors 2022 champs. Because that's what it's looking like. That's what it's looking like. That doesn't mean the Nets can't figure it out, the Lakers can't figure it out, or all these other teams that are talent-wise, the Clippers better can figure it out. That doesn't mean that they can't figure it out and obviously develop. But Golden State has no pressure on them. And they're not even full strength. Scary times, y'all. Scary times for the rest of the league if Golden State's just kind of ho-humming, doing their thing throughout the league to get to where they need to get to. Because the next thing you know, they're going to be sitting at, 49, 55, 57 wins. Really no major depth. Long-term depth. You know what I'm talking about? Like, they have a bunch of youth depth, and all they got to do is get confident, and the next thing you know, this becomes a regularity for them. 50-plus wins, again, with this new system and this new roster, and they've got long-term depth now, and they've got superstars, and they've got max players. That's when you sit back and you say, uh-oh, here comes another run for Golden State. And they might just take on the new decade and early on and prove us all wrong. And it's coming to that. It's coming to that, and it's coming to that real quick. All right, episode 8 is in the books. Episode 9 will be next week on the 16th of November. That's right. We'll be a week out from Thanksgiving the next episode. That's crazy, man. We're already flying through this month here on the Hoopers Log on the Lead Sports Media Podcasting Network, on Podbean, Apple Pod, all these other places to find us. I mean, it is a blessing. It is a blessing to be back on all of these networks and podcast sections. And we've got a bunch of great shows going on. I mean, you got free basketball yesterday that was on. Obviously, you got the W. You got Motorcade 305, 315. Fortunately, the Pistons aren't very good, so fortunately, if I butchered a couple times, it's not the end of the world. But we got our Pistons pod coming up. We got the W coming up tomorrow. Again, I thank you again for listening to the Hoopers Log. Episode 8, Season 8 in the books. Episode 9 next week. Have a good one, y'all.